Hey, welcome back to episode 40. We're going to say this is so you want to call an unsafe function. And what we're going to do today, the actual use case, is what we want to do is we want to take this XML that's in a string format here and we want to parse that to some JSON. Now, to do that, we're not going to write that parser. That problem has been solved. So we're going to use this XML to JS library. But the thing about the XML to JS library, obviously, is that it may or may not be able to parse the thing for us. And the way that we know that that may be the case is that to call parse string, which is one of the functions that it exports, you pass it XML and then you pass it a callback. So this is, once again, this is node callback stuff. So what we can actually do is to make two improvements over this. To make it more of a pure function. So what we can do is we can actually wrap that parse string in a future. So we saw that yesterday. Well, why a future? Because a future handles this concept of an error or an OK. It also handles the fact that parse XML, or parse string here, is given a continuation. So it's basically the same thing, only rather than doing anything here, what we do is if it's the error case, then we reject. If it's not the error case, then we resolve with the value coming back from OK. And this works for any XML that we would pass into it. It will return back whatever type of object is returned by parse string in the resolved version. Or if it's an error, we'll return it in reject. So if you've seen things, if you've seen any of the videos I've done on either or maybe, those would be okay too, except that those don't handle the fact that this is also a callback. And so that may be another reason to think about using a future. If you have callback things like this, you can use a future, you can reject and resolve it here, and it's going to handle that whole node continuation passing kind of thing with callbacks. So that's what we get. And first step, looking into that, to actually parse that out. Let's say we want to get this hello world out of this XML here. One way we could do that, you see I have it commented out here. Spoiler alert, it's not the way that I'm going to end up doing it. But if we wanted to get the foo inner and wanted to create a future from that, we could call parse XML and give it the XML that we wanted. So this XML comes here. And then we can map to get the property foo. And then just the way that the library does it, the inner text, I guess, is the correct term. That's maybe not right. The inner junk here is in this underscore. So OK is the result term back, foo is this object, and then underscore is actually this. So that's what this underscore is about. And so we can absolutely do this, but we have absolutely no reusability for this, right? Because we're going to parse this XML, then we're going to do the property foo and then this property, because in this case we're focused on what that data flow is coming through here. So instead of that, let's look at drawing this a different way. And one of the ways that we can do that is we can call foo from XML and we can make it point free. Or we can do it in point free style. And so what we can do here is we can say that getting foo, the inner foo from XML, is simply the composition of a parse XML function, which is going to return a future. So to deal with the resolve version, or the success track, if you will, we're going to have to map to be able to deal with the value of that success track. And we can get prop foo. And then what we can do is we can map again inside that success track to get the inner text, this hello world in this XML example of that. And this absolutely works. We can call foo from XML, run it, and once it saves and comes back, we get hello world just as we would expect, and that is nice. Now, one thing that I dislike about this one is that parse XML is one logical thing, and then getting the inner text of the foo node is another logical thing. But that's not obvious from the way that we've composed this. And then there's the other thing about calling map and then calling map again. Well, in one of my very early videos, we talked about functors and functor laws, and we said that if we were to compose a map and then a map, that's the exact same thing as mapping the compose of the value of the functions passed to map each way. So let's look at what that actually looks like, because that sounds way more complex than it actually is. Let's get it all on the same line here so that we can comment it. And now once we've done that, what we can do is we can create this additional function here called foo underscore. We could also call it foo intertext, whatever we want to do there, but basically foo underscore now becomes the composition of getting the property foo followed by getting the property underscore from whatever object is passed in. What can we do with that? Well, now that we've composed this thing, foo is one function now. So now, foo from XML that we can do, we can parse XML, and then we can simply map this foo function. We don't have to map twice, which means we're not trying to get inside of that future structure multiple times. We only have to get inside of that future structure once to be able to deal with any of that. Which is nice, because there could be some performance benefits here that we're only getting in it once. In an example where the functor we're dealing with is an array, this makes sure that we're only going to iterate through that array once versus the one that we saw here, where technically we'd be iterating through that array twice. And then of course, if we were to actually run this, we get the exact same thing. This time we get hello world, but it's much more concise. We now have a function that deals with one thing, which is getting the inner text of the foo node, and we have another function which parsing the XML. With that, we're still returning a future, so absolutely nothing happens if we were to comment out this fork function that we have here. And we can pass it any XML that just so happens to have this structure to be able to traverse whatever the XML is. So we can still use both of these rather than being data flow now. Now we're still accepting that function and saying we're accepting any XML in this case, which obviously could fail, but we're accepting any XML, and we're able to deal with that from the same inner foo from XML function that we have. So I hope you enjoyed that. That's a little bit of a longer one again today, but hopefully showing an actual use case, and then maybe some other ways of thinking about why you should use a future rather than an either. What does that give you? And also showing that future kind of has some of the benefits that either or maybe might have, where you've got the concept of something that might fail. But that is also, theoretically is going to be asynchronous in this case. So there you have it. That's been episode 40, so you want to call an unsafe function. Thanks.